Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to welcome you here again. This evening, I'm going to be having a conversation with my good friend and colleague, Ruchie Avital. Ruchie Avital was the spokesman for the Jewish community in the town of Ofra. She's also a simultaneous interpreter English Hebrew, let me say the greatest Hebrew English interpreter on the unredeemed side of the River Jordan. Okay, so this evening we're going to be having a little conversation about Judea and Samaria. We're going to try and understand a little bit more about the history and also the little inconsistencies which have crept in over the years with regard to the narrative. Okay, many people are a little confused, and we're going to try and help them. We're going to try and unpack the history and its relationship to the Arab-Israeli struggle, which unfortunately has the misnomer of the Israeli-Palestinian struggle, but we who use the correct terminology call it the Israeli-Palestinist struggle. Okay, so without further ado, Ruchi, it's very good to have you here this evening. I
Very
haven't.
good to be here with you.
Excellent. Excellent. So let's try and unpack a little bit of history here of Judea and Samaria. Of course, our viewers probably, some of you will probably know that Judea and Samaria was the heartland of Jewish civilization in antiquity. Okay.
Well, Jews are called Jews because of Judea.
Indeed. Do you hear that? This is the first lesson for you folks. Judea, Jews. Judea gives the name to the Jewish people. Jews, Jewish is a derivative of Yehuda. Okay, so that's the first part of our story. We mentioned it was the heartland of Jewish civilization till, let's say, the destruction of that semblance of Jewish independence which existed under Herod the Great, and subsequently the Bar Kokhba revolt, which was repressed by Hadrian. That was the final blow to Jewish independence until we. Yeah, go ahead.
It was Hadrian who invented the term Palestine.
Indeed, Ruchi rightly reminds us that Palestine is an invention. It was a name that was applied to this area when Hadrian wanted to wipe out any semblance of association between the Jewish people and the land of Israel. Thank you, Ruchi, for that. Yes, indeed. He almost succeeded, didn't he?
Well, he almost succeeded, along with other conquerors who almost succeeded. But as we say, almost is not enough.
Indeed.
The Jewish people have managed to survive all those that tried to conquer Judea, to conquer the land of Israel, to destroy the Jewish people. We're talking about the Egyptian nation, which, of course, the land of Egypt today, the people who live there are not the ancient Egyptians. They are just
Indeed.
People living in the land called Egypt. They are not the ancient Egyptians, which died out. The ancient Romans, the Italians living today, are not the ancient Romans.
Indeed.
The Roman Empire died out, and all the empires, the Greek Empire that tried to destroy us, and the Jewish people survived.
Indeed.
And something very interesting, on Yom Kippur, I was praying from a prayer book which had commentary by the late Rabbi Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. And he mentions there that all the peoples, the kings of other nations, when they wanted to be remembered, they built statues in their own memory, Colosseum in Rome, and temples for their gods, and of those nothing remains. But the Jews only wanted one thing. They wanted education for their children. That was always the most important thing. And that was the one thing that saved the Jewish people from extinction over those thousands of years when we had no country. The Jewish education, that was given to all children from almost time immemorial. Even in the time of the Bible, the Jewish people were literate already.
Indeed.
As a rule. Long, long before any other people in the world, there was general education for all children. It's a commandment in the Torah to teach your child the Torah.
Indeed, indeed. And we have archaeological evidence for this as well, as you well know, from Tel Gezer. We have ancient Hebrew script, which certainly attests to what Ruchie has rightly.
They even found tablets that show where children practiced writing. You could even see that.
Indeed, that's right, and we also have the amulet found in Ketef Hinnom, with the oldest surviving example of the blessing of the Kohanim. Indeed, that's a very interesting point, and I'm glad you reminded me of that.
So we don't have temples. We had our temple, of course, but we didn't have magnificent statues and colosseums and things of that nature. Our heritage was passed down from parents to children over thousands of years.
Indeed. And I want to connect to that word heritage, because something that many people are not aware of is the systematic attempt to wipe out archaeological evidence in Judea and Samaria.
This is a terrible, terrible crime that is going on. The archaeological evidence doesn't lie.
Indeed.
We're constantly finding ancient coins. In fact, what I'm wearing right now, this necklace, is the replica. My husband bought it for me for my birthday. It's the replica of an earring that was found in the city of David in an archaeological dig. Exactly this size. This is a replica of that earring that was found in the city of David.
That's right.
I wear it all the time.
Fantastic.
I love it. And it's very meaningful to me.
That's right.
And the archaeological evidence doesn't lie. And sadly, what you call the Palestinists.
Let's get it.
The Palestinists.
Yeah.
This is a people, I'll go back to what I said earlier about Hadrian's curse. This is a people that was invented for one purpose only.
Exactly.
To replace the Jewish people in the land of Israel. They have no real desire to create a state for themselves. They're not a real people with a real joined history. Exactly. They are a collection of Arab-speaking people that happened to be, some of them happened to be here when the state of Israel was created.
Indeed.
That came here in the decades or 50, 60 years before, when the Jews began to return to the land of Israel, and the land of Israel has always been faithful and loyal to the Jewish people.
Indeed.
Because when the Jews do not live here en masse, the land of Israel has always been barren. And there is so much evidence and so many testimonies that show, for example, Mark Twain's famous book was here in the 19th century, talking about the wilderness he found here, how everything was barren and nothing grew in the land of Israel. Look at Gaza. Nobody believed. It's just sand, right?
Indeed.
It's all sand. The soil there is all sand.
Yeah.
Nobody believed that anything could grow there. And when we had our communities in Gush Katif, inside Gaza, we grew the sweetest, most wonderful cherry tomatoes and the most wonderful lettuce that was exported all over the world. To this day, the name Katif is still the name that it is branded under. The land of Israel came back to life when the Jewish people returned. They were like a wife waiting for her husband to return, languishing in the dark until he came home. And the land flourished. Everything in Israel is green. When the Jews live here, the land flourishes and blooms.
Exactly.
We bloomed the desert.
Exactly.
A barren wilderness, and now it is. And the Palestinians or Palestinists, did I get it right?
Yes, you did.
The Palestinists, this is just a ploy to steal the land. Everything they have, every story they tell is stolen from the Jewish people.
Indeed,
Everything they claim in 1947, when Israel was offered the partition plan. If you're familiar with the map, I suggest you look it up. It's a terrible map. It's a terrible map. A large part of the Western Galilee is not included
Indeed,
in it.
It was a very bad deal. It was a
very bad deal. And
yeah.
the Negev was not included in it, and Jerusalem was cut through the middle, and all of what is Judea and Samaria was not included in that map.
Indeed.
And Israel said, we'll take it. Give us a tablecloth, give us a postage stamp, and we will manage, because we want to have a country.
Indeed.
When Yitzhak Rabin offered, when Ehud Barak offered Arafat 97% of the territory that they claimed, they said no.
Of Judea and Samaria.
They don't want Judea and Samaria. They don't want a country. They don't want us to be here. It's a little bit like the story of Solomon, King Solomon and the two mothers.
Yes, indeed.
The famous story where there were two women who had each had their own baby, and one of the babies sadly died. The mother apparently smothered him by mistake, and the mothers whose baby died claimed that the other woman's baby was hers. And King Solomon, of course, said in the very famous judgment, cut the baby in half. And then the real mother said, no.
Indeed.
Even if I don't have him, as long as he is safe.
Indeed.
Let the other woman take her. So they don't care what happens to this land. They burn it. We have fires every year in the summer. They burn the land. If you love the land, you don't burn it. You don't destroy it.
You don't violate it. You don't
violate it. Exactly.
Indeed.
Exactly.
And I think we should remind people that this land, Judea and Samaria, which they want to claim for a future state, was under Jordanian control until 1967, whereupon the late King Hussein decided to wage a war against Israel, and thankfully he lost, and the land was redeemed. And many people fail to see, this is where people continuously try to square the circle. They had Judea and Samaria until 1967. Why wasn't a Palestinian state created in this period? So this lends weight to your point that they didn't want a state at all in the beginning. Their sole interest is the destruction of the Jewish state. Indeed, I often repeat that this is a proxy war, because the so-called Palestinian people are generally a creation of all those elements that are antagonistic to a Jewish presence in the land of Israel, anywhere in the land of Israel. Anyway, so I think we've conveyed this quite clearly. Let's try and look at the reality on the ground now in Judea and Samaria, areas A, B, and C. What can you tell us a little bit about this arrangement?
In the 1990s, when Israel agreed to negotiate, was kind of bamboozled into it. But
that's very true, and you raise a very good point, because the Oslo Accords, the infamous Oslo Accords, were passed by corrupting members of the opposition. Okay,
that's correct. Well, all the negotiations were conducted in secret behind Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin's back.
Exactly.
He was presented with a fait accompli.
Exactly.
And he agreed reluctantly. And some people say that had he not been assassinated, he might have backed down. There's no way of knowing, of course.
No way of knowing, but I think it's reasonable to assume that his instincts, he had the correct instincts.
He had the correct instincts. Unfortunately, he didn't have the fortitude to carry through on his instincts.
That's right.
And as he said, his stomach hurt him when he had to shake Arafat's hand on the White House lawn. That's what he said.
Right.
And I believe him, but that's not enough.
It's not enough.
And also, I think there's another point. I think, and he has. This is testified to. He did not believe in the people of Israel. He did not believe that we would be strong enough to continue have this continuous war on.
Yes,
and
yes.
he wanted to have some kind of settlement and put an end. He didn't believe that we've proved to him, at least during this past year for sure, that he was wrong.
Yeah.
And, I say, that some people don't believe in God. That's, one problem. That's one issue.
Yeah.
But some people in Israel don't believe in the Jewish people, don't believe in the people of Israel.
That's right.
Don't believe that we have the fortitude to stand up and continue fighting. What, are we going to live on our swords forever?
Right.
Perhaps we will.
Perhaps yeah,
we will.
Indeed. And I think we should make this very important distinction, because the old Labour Party, the old left, were a Land of Israel party.
Absolutely.
Okay? All the founding fathers, Ben Gurion, Katznelson, Golda Meir, they were all territorialists, not to mention Yitzhak Tambenkin and Moshe Shamir, who are actually angry at Menachem Begin for having given up the Sinai in the Camp David agreement. Anyway, we've digressed slightly. Let's get back to tell us a little bit about the arrangement B, C.
The Oslo Accords were made up of a lot of convoluted agreements, one of which was not to agree to a Palestinian state, but instead to have an autonomous region that would be have different varying degrees of autonomy, where the bulk of the territory, the largest part of the territory of Judea and Samaria, would be Area A and would be under complete control of what became the Palestinian Authority. And they are in charge of, they have full control over all the major cities. In fact, they're in control of 95% of the population, where about 95% of the population lives.
Yes.
Then there is Area C. I'm going to jump to C. Area C is the areas that remain under full Israeli control. It's a much smaller part of the territory, and it includes all the Jewish communities and some of the surrounding areas and roads leading to those communities. And in the middle is an area known as B, which is under Palestinian civil control, but under Israeli security control, a kind of a hybrid area, which also includes most of the roads in Judea and Samaria.
Yeah.
And what happened as a result of this was that the Palestinian Authority was established, and they held elections. And the gentleman who currently stands at the head of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, was elected for a 4-year term, which he is now in his, I think, 16th year of that 4-year term.
Oh, that's right.
That's what's known as, they had elections in Gaza also, and there Hamas won, as we know, after the disengagement. And the PLO, who control the Palestinian Authority, are very fearful that Hamas would win an election and the right in the Palestinian Authority as well. So they haven't held a second elections. And that's what's known as one vote, one man, one time.
Beautifully put.
And so they haven't had any elections since then. And they know that Hamas is extremely popular in the Palestinian Authority.
It certainly rules on the ground. There's no doubt about that effective control is in the hands of the Hamas thugs.
Yes.
And
the truth is that we don't know exactly what would happen if, for example, the Palestinian Authority were disintegrate or be dismantled or whatever. We don't know exactly what would happen. We impose Western political systems on cultures that are very different from we are used to in the West.
Indeed.
In the West, and not everywhere in the West, there's some countries that it took them longer to get to where they are today than others. But like what began in Britain with the Magna Carta and so on and so forth, and democracy, and the king was no longer the absolute monarch, and so on and so forth. And the development and evolvement of democracy as it developed and evolved in Western countries is not something that happened in the Middle East.
No, it
Africa,
didn't.
For that matter.
No,
right?
you raise a very important point.
So, along comes America, let's say, and tries to impose some form of democracy on Libya, let's say. The whole country fell apart. The whole country fell apart. It was
not to mention Iraq.
It was much, and Iraq, of course, but it was much easier, even when you had a strong man, a tyrant, an evil man like Gaddafi, let's say, in Libya. It was easier to deal with him. He controlled the country.
Right.
So now what you have is you have a whole bunch of tyrants. And chaos, absolute chaos. And Italy, I'm sure, feels that more than any other country because it's very close to Libya. And they have all these migrants coming in over boats.
That's right.
Over a very short distance.
That's right.
In Europe.
Indeed. You made some very interesting points there. I always maintain, though, it is very hard really to know what's in the minds of the population there to a great extent, because we can't really talk about public opinion in Judea and Samaria among the Arab population. But I think, go ahead.
I think what would happen, if the people were allowed to do what they really want, the nature of the culture in Arab countries, in the Middle East, and that's true. This is true for Iraq as well. It's a clan population.
The
tribal loyalty is the strongest loyalty.
Indeed.
The fact that Sykes-Picot came around about 100 years ago and took rollers and drew straight lines on the map for Jordan, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, that doesn't turn them into countries that have a national solidarity. Like even Italy was a country that took a long time to become one country. It took a long time. Germany took a long time to become one country. This was true in Europe as well. Until nation states were
very
created,
true.
You had all these principas and all these princes and everywhere, and all the castles all over the place, and in the Middle East, it's still very much like that.
Yes, it is.
We probably need to come up with some kind of system. Not we, but us, somehow in the Middle East that is different from what we are familiar with in Europe, and not impose, the United States of Iraq or the United States of Palestine or whatever they want to call it. The United States of these are separate units. These
Indeed. Every city is run by a couple of clans. They're the strong men,
and that's where their loyalty lies.
And that's
they
where
don't
their
have a
loyalty
loyalty
lies.
to a central government. They don't have that loyalty to the central government.
That's right.
They despise the central government.
That's right. I remember a few years ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was talk about extending Israeli law to the Jordan Valley. And the Israeli journalist Yechezkeli was interviewing the Arabs where they would want to be, under which jurisdiction they would want to be. And they all maintained that they wanted to be under Israeli law. And I think this is something very important when they do see a better way of life. And I think, let me be frank, I think Palestinism is the cruelest system to impose upon decent Arabs. This is what people don't realize. Palestinism is
look
poison.
What happened in Gaza. There's a war going on in Gaza. It's a terrible, terrible war in Gaza for the Gazans. It's terrible for us too, but it's being fought in Gaza.
Indeed.
And the Gaza is being destroyed. I mean, the cities are being blown up, what they call so-called refugee camps. They're not really refugee camps. They're just, they're suburbs of towns and things of that nature. They're being blown up because they have tunnels underneath.
Of course.
And they have to be blown up in order to.
There's no choice. People don't realize.
This is the only war, I think, in human history where people are not allowed to flee.
That's right.
No one is allowed to flee from Gaza.
Right. And
Gaza has a border with Egypt.
Exactly. And people.
They speak the same language in Egypt.
And they're very often of Egyptian origin.
And they once belonged to Egypt.
Indeed.
So the most normal, most obvious thing would be for Egypt to open its border and allow them. Now,
Exactly.
Egypt's not allowing them in. They know why they don't want them in. They don't want the Gazans in. But that's actually contrary to international law.
Right.
According to international law, I mean, Italy knows that
Yeah.
people, they are forced to take in these so-called refugees, some of whom are just labor migrants. They're mostly men, right? Refugees tend to be women and children as well.
That's right.
And these are 95% men, young men, not even old men, young men. So, you know, and you're not allowed, according to international law, you're the first country that they arrive in, you can't turn them away, right? That's the law. And Egypt is not allowed by law to turn, it just won't let them in.
Well, Egypt, well, there's a very good reason for that as well.
They have
because
a history.
They are very much the villain of the piece. People are focusing to a great extent on Iran, but I think we should also be looking at Egypt and examining the nature of our relationship with Egypt, because the Camp David agreement was very much a one-sided agreement. Absolutely. Where Israel ceded territory to a country.
Excuse me, Mark, can you explain better about the Camp David? So the people that are following us,
certainly.
Is it better that you can explain?
Certainly. The Camp David agreements were agreements between the governments of Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin, whereby Israel ceded territory in exchange for peace. And I believe this was a very flawed way of reasoning as well, because practically what's happening is you offer a refund to an aggressor nation. Now, be that as it may, Egypt has not abided by its part of the agreement, namely to de-escalate tension in the medium, what is taught in the schools. And not only that, we have evidence that it has been complicit in the buildings of the tunnels, whereby Hamas have been able to get supplies of weapons. Okay, so we know
more than complicit.
They
were benefactors, in fact.
Indeed.
In fact, the story that I've read is that the family of the president of Egypt himself have earned millions, if not billions, from this smuggling operation through Rafah, through the tunnels in Rafah, of weapons, of vehicles, army vehicles, of missiles, of God knows what goes through, as well as other things that are smuggled in.
Of course. Indeed, these tunnels are feats of civil engineering. These are not improvised tunnels. These are feats of civil engineering.
You know, we found there are tunnels in Lebanon as well.
Yeah.
And some people say, you know, it's much harder to build them in Lebanon. The truth is that it's easy to build them in Gaza, but it's very hard to keep them up.
Yes.
Because it's sand.
Yeah.
So it has to be built with a great deal of concrete. Lebanon is rock, so it's harder to build it, but they stay up, right? They're not going to collapse.
That's
quickly.
Right. Geologically,
absolutely civil engineering.
Let me bring in Edda. Edda wanted to ask some questions.
Yes, about the Lebanon tunnel. I would like to know, because this morning I spoke with somebody from Israel, and they told me that they were ready to destroy the Galilee. And the Galilee is a Christian area, a long area. This is alla that I would like to say to the Christian in Italy, because there is a lot of confusion. People are very, very confused. They think for the justice here, for the justice there. And I would like to say to the Italian people, if this program, this project by tunnel that they made with the map to destroy Galilee, all the Christianity, they tried to destroy all the Christianity there. It's true or not? What do you think about it?
It's absolutely true. And the fact is that plans were found, very, very clear plans. and maps were found in these tunnels showing that the Redwan force, which was the so-called elite force of the Hezbollah, were planning to do exactly what happened on October 7th, but on a much larger scale in the Galilee. They were planning to invade Israel. These tunnels, a few of them crossed into Israel. I think those were the ones that were found that were crossing into Israel or were destroyed a few years ago. But the ones that have been found in the last few weeks in Lebanon came very close to the border, a few hundred meters from the border. And they found inside plans and maps and weapons. And these tunnels are completely equipped like army camps. And they were planning to invade Israel and do exactly what the Gazans did on October 7th in the south of Israel. And Lebanon, you know, they don't even have the pretext that the Gazans claim that we took their land. We don't even have a territorial disagreement with Lebanon. There's no argument with Lebanon. Lebanon is one country, Israel is another country. They are a sovereign country. We are a sovereign country. We don't have anything. They don't have any reason, any pretext, any casus belli to attack us.
Indeed.
It's pure hatred of the Jewish state.
Indeed.
That's it.
Indeed, indeed.
And it's the arm of Iran. They are the proxy of Iran, one of the tentacles of the octopus of Tehran, and the strongest one, supposedly.
Yeah.
The fact is that when our soldiers started to go in after Nasrallah was killed, yesterday they said they captured one Hezbollah captive, Redwan soldier. Today, 3 more. I mean, that's it. The others, they've all run away. These great heroes, they've all run north to escape from the Israeli army. And one of them was on the news this evening, and he was saying they were planning to do exactly what was done on October 7th. They were planning to take hundreds of hostages up north into Lebanon and to rape and kill and pillage and burn exactly as they did. Wow. Absolutely massacre the people.
Yes.
And I can only say I believe with all my heart that the terrible, terrible thing that happened on October 7th was actually very sad, but a very important message we received, the Israeli people received from God, so that we would realize what was being prepared for us from the north, because the situation in the north would have been much, much worse. And thank God, really thank God, that we were able to protect ourselves and prevent that from occurring up in the north.
Right. I'm getting a couple of questions from our viewers here. Okay. Ruchie, in your estimation, can you give a percentage of the Arab-Israeli population which is proud of living in Israel and wouldn't want it to become Palestine?
As Marcos said earlier, it's very hard to know exactly what Arab public opinion is, because they are much more frightened of their own people if they speak out in favor of Israel. I believe that there is, I can't give you numbers, of course, but I believe that there is a significant proportion who would just like to live in peace. Maybe they won't, Israeli flag, although there are Zionist Arabs as well.
Absolutely.
There are.
And I can confirm that. And I can confirm what Ruchie is saying. There are many decent people. Yes.
Very, not just decent, but even pro-Israeli.
That's right.
Even vocally pro-Israeli. One of the Yosef Haddad is one of Israel's most eloquent spokespeople. He's a young Christian Arab who served in the army, who was injured as an Israeli soldier, and he speaks out all over the world. Israel has ambassadors who are Israeli Arabs, ambassadors working for the foreign ministry in various countries in the world. I think there's one in in the former Soviet Union.
Yeah, one of the
country now.
yeah.
There's right. There's an Arab ambassador.
That's right. You're right. We also had Shadi Khalul, who is an officer in the Israeli army. We interviewed him here as well some time ago. If people are interested, they can see that on YouTube. Got another question here. What now? And this is one of the things I wanted to raise, because while everybody's focused on Gaza and the Lebanon, there's also a parallel war going on in Judea and Samaria.
Yes, unfortunately, there isn't really any difference between Gaza and Judea and Samaria in terms. It's the same population and the same sentiments, unfortunately.
That's right.
And Israel really has to get its act together. And I mean, a lot is being done. There have been a lot of firefights and also a lot of intelligence work, a lot of we just heard about a plot. 5 Israeli Arabs actually were arrested from al-Fahim, who were planning to blow up the Israeli towers in Tel Aviv.
Yes, a sort of a 9/11 variant, an Israeli variant.
Right,
yeah.
It was in the very early planning stages, but Israel managed to arrest them, and there's a lot of people are being arrested or killed. There are firefights in Judea and Samaria, but a lot more needs to be done. And I think one of the most important things is a law that there are Knesset members that are trying to pass now, that anyone who engages in terror, whether there are Israeli Arabs or in Judea and Samaria, will be deported to.
Excuse me, but there are some people in solidarity with Israel among the Palestinian people, or are all enemy of Israel?
Well, we don't decide that they are all this or all that. There are some people, if Israel gets all this intelligence about various organizations going on in Judea and Samaria, it's obviously coming from people who are supplying this information. If they arrested these 5 Arabs in al-Fahim, obviously there were some people there who informed on them. But what I want to say, and I want to connect it to what I said earlier, is this is not America. This is not Italy. This is not England. Okay, this is the Middle East. There's only one currency that is important here: land. And if we don't make the enemy pay, we care about human life. I have always said this when I was a spokesperson, and I would receive groups of journalists from Europe and all kinds of groups and all kinds of people. And I would say to them, if I ask you, what is the most important value to you? What is the most important value to you? And everybody would always say human life, right? Human life is the most important value. I mean, that we don't have to argue about that. That's that's a given. But if a man can murder his daughter or his sister or even his mother for family honor, then family honor is more important than human life. Then honor is more important than human life, right? So then we're working in a different value system. And we cannot, it's like one side is playing chess and the other side is playing checkers, a different game with different rules. You can't do that. You have to be playing on the same board with the same rules.
Indeed.
And in this part of the world, the only thing that counts is land. So if a family knew that if one of their members was involved in terror, they would the whole family be deported. It wouldn't happen very often. It wouldn't have to happen very often. You just have to actually do it a few times.
You have to carry it out. Yeah.
You have to carry it out. And that's the only language. In Gaza, if we don't take land in Gaza, then in a few years' time, we're going to find ourselves facing the same situation again.
Indeed, back to square one.
Back to square one. That's the only coin that this part of the world understands. And it isn't going to help by imposing, what they used to call Coca-Cola imperialism. You can't come along with American values and impose them and say, this is how we would do it. No, it doesn't matter how you would do it. It doesn't matter at all. In this part of the world, if we want to survive, and we do want to, and we plan to survive,
and we shall survive,
and it's been proven, as Marco said, the peace with the so-called peace with Egypt, a very fragile, a very precarious peace, that was based on Israel giving up territory that it won in a war of defense after it was attacked. That is not a good basis for peace. However, the Abraham Accords, where nothing was given up, nothing was given up. Everybody wins. Everybody wants to be in that arrangement because everybody benefits. That is a good basis for peace. And we've proven that it is possible. There are Arabs in the world who do want to live in peace with Israel. The vast majority of the Arab world are Sunni Arabs, not Shiite Arabs, okay? The Shiites, they want to kill, after they kill the Jews and the Christians, they're going to kill the Sunnis, right?
Yes. They have an axe to grind with the
order
Sunnis.
Isn't important. They can do it all at the same time. They're multitaskers, right? They can kill Jews and Arabs, and they can kill Jews and Arabs and Christians. It's all good.
That's right. I'm getting a question about the other groups within Israel. I'm going to reassume, and I'm going to basically answer this question. We have some groups that are indeed very well integrated into Israeli society. We have the Druze, who are an extremely well integrated and much loved group in Israel. Many Christians who serve in the Israeli army who identify increasingly with the state of Israel, and a not insignificant number of Muslims too, okay? So that we have a situation that's evolving also in a very positive way. I have another question here, Ruchie. Is UNIFIL, in your opinion, complicit with Hezbollah, or is it naive or afraid of Hezbollah? What's your understanding of that situation?
I think all the answers are correct. I think that, if you saw yesterday when they showed this huge 800 meter long tunnel, 800-meter long tunnel with refrigerators and kitchens and stoves and freezers filled with meat. How long were they planning to be there? I mean, it's just unbelievable. Beds and weapons and everything. 800 meters long, about 100 meters from the UNIFIL outpost. Underneath, you could, and you know what it takes to build inside the rock. They would have had to blow it up, right? And it would have they would have come with land moving equipment and made a lot of noise. And
it's a feat of major civil engineering.
Right? Literally under the nose of UNIFIL. So I think that is a question that answers itself. They're obviously complicit, and they're probably also afraid. Naive, I doubt. I wouldn't give them that credit. That would be too
kind. That would be charitable.
Too kind. Yes, too charitable. Yeah. But yes, no, that's clear.
Going back to the Christian population, now I want people, and you can confirm this for me, the fate of the Christian population in areas under the Palestinian authority.
Well, we don't have to go very far. Just take Bethlehem.
Right.
Bethlehem, a very, very important city for Christianity, was 90%, I believe, Christian.
That's right.
30, 40 years ago. And now I think it's maybe 15% Christian.
Maybe less. Maybe less.
Maybe less. And I don't know if you remember, but back there was that hold off the inside a church.
Inside the Church of the Nativity, yes.
Inside
I remember.
The Church of the Nativity. I mean, my husband is a tour guide like Marco, and he used to take tourists all the time to Bethlehem.
Indeed, yeah.
And you can't go in now without special permission, and have to have somebody guarding you, and so on and so forth. It is not the same city anymore. And it's not. It was a very not a Christian city anymore.
Sadly.
And most of the Christians there have left to South America and other places.
And those that haven't left are abused on a systematic basis.
And the ones that remained are abused. The girls are abused. And it's really their fate. And that's true of everywhere in Judea and Samaria. I remember near Ophrah, there is a town that was, I remember driving through it. There always had Santa Claus, pictures on the wall. And they even had a beer factory there.
They still have that. That's still
that, right?
It's Taiba beer. It's actually a very good beer. A very good beer.
Right? A very nice beer.
Yeah.
And of course, Muslims wouldn't make beer, so it's Christian. It has to be Christian. Yeah. That's why I mentioned that. And and they do not have an easy time, and they know that very well. That under Jewish rule, they are given complete freedom of religion.
Absolutely.
Prego.
Go ahead.
Marcus, sorry. Excuse me. One question. What Israel is thinking to do after the resolution, the votation of the UN last September? What's Israel's reaction? How Israel will answer to this votation to the UN? Can you tell us about this?
Could you remind me specifically what the
about the reaction of Israel after the votation in the UN in New York last September? How Israel will answer to UN about this? Because UN is trying to stolen the land of Israel. Is a terrorist, diplomatic terrorist.
You've said it.
I think you answered your own question. Yes, but I want. It's a very important question for one reason. I would like to point something out. It's a very, very important point. Whenever Israel does the right thing for Israel, the whole world gets behind it. Every time. Most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time Israel, for various reasons, and I'm not in the position of the prime minister and the foreign minister and the defense minister, and I don't know, what the United States is doing. I can just imagine they are holding back munitions and forcing Israel to give the so-called humanitarian aid in Gaza and things like that. But when Israel does the right thing, the whole world eventually, usually not immediately, but eventually realizes that is the right thing for the world. I'll just give you one or two examples. For example, when Israel bombed the nuclear reactor in Iraq under Saddam Hussein, immediately afterwards there were condemnations. But then when the United States fought the war in the Gulf, it thanked Israel for doing that. It realized that Israel did the right thing, and that happens again and again and again. So we have to tell ourselves, we have to do the right thing for us.
That's right.
And we're seeing it now in Lebanon.
If we do the right thing, the rest of the world reaps the benefits. Sorry, Ruchie,
the rest of the world reaps the benefits and realizes that we are showing them the way. And we have to show the way. That is the purpose of the Jewish people. We have to fight evil. And we are surrounded by evil. These aren't just enemies like, two countries. No, this is an evil enemy. We saw it. This is the face of evil.
Yes. I think it's the same for Iran. If Iran will be cancelled from this terrorist government, I think the Iranian people will say, thank you, Israel.
Absolutely. I am sure. Israel, the people of Israel and the people of Iran, of Persia, have a very long history, a good history.
Yes.
We have a good history. We are still grateful today, to this day, to Koresh, who was the emperor and who allowed the Jews and told the Jews actually to come back to the land of Israel and rebuild the temple. So we have this long-standing relationship, good relationship with the Persian people. And I believe that the Persian people hate their government very, very much. And, here's another example of earlier. Nasrallah was taken out a few weeks ago. We were so terrified of Nasrallah. What was he? A funny little man, evil man, living in a bunker for 20 years, too afraid to go outside, didn't even go to his own mother's funeral because he was afraid he would be killed. And then we took him out and he's gone. And the whole world is saying, huh, wow, that was actually a good thing.
Yes, breathe a sigh of relief.
Yeah. And if we did the same thing in Iran, if we could do that, and that's, Hania was taken out in Iran, and now I'm hearing maybe the Iranians did it. Who knows? I don't know. Nobody knows. But if we do the same thing in Iran,
Yes.
I think the whole world is so frightened of Iran. They've never actually fought a war. They always they're just like they're not Arabs, but they're just like the people in Gaza that hide behind human shields. They hide behind their proxies and they hide behind their people. They don't fight on their own. They use other people. They buy other people to fight for them.
Yes.
And they're buying people in Europe too, by the way.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of the demonstrations.
And so is Qatar. And
Indeed.
so is Qatar.
The good relation with the Iran people and the Shah, the king of before the Ayatollah. I remember I studied that they saved during the Second War. They saved many children from Holocaust.
I actually know people who came through Iran from Poland that came through Iran to Israel. Yes, that's true. It's true. And I know people who worked in Iran before the Ayatollah came to power, before, the so-called revolution in Iran. I know people who worked in Iran. The Israeli companies worked in Iran, irrigation and all kinds of things. Yeah, there was a good relation. I think there's a relationship now too, under the radar, as they say, with Iranians. I think the Iranian people are not behind their government, but nobody's asking them. They have fake, elections. Nobody actually went out. Very few people went out to vote when they actually had an election, because it doesn't matter if you vote or not. It's just a charade, right? So there's no real democracy there.
Indeed. I'm getting some questions in. Let's see if we have a few minutes left. Bethlehem and Nazareth, Christian cities par excellence. What do you think? Nazareth, of course, is within Israeli-controlled territory, so there's no issue with that. What do you think the destiny will be of Bethlehem, which is in Judea? I think we know the answer, but you tell them, what do you think?
Well, if as long as the Arabs are in charge there, it will not be a Christian city, because again, as we spoke earlier, it's a cultural thing. This is a religious neighborhood. Everything here is about religion. And people who tried for so many years to say, no, it's a territorial conflict, it's not a religion, don't make it. They're always saying to the right, don't make it a religious conflict. It's not we who are making it a religious conflict. It is a religious conflict. And there is no difference between Hamas and PLO. It's just different tactics. The strategy is exactly the same.
Yeah.
The tactics are different. Arafat and his ilk, they put on, well, he didn't, but they put on suits, and they're terrorists in suits.
That's right.
Not wearing, he wore a uniform. He even went to the UN in a uniform with a gun in the UN.
Yes.
And that's how little self-respect the UN has for itself. Well, what do you expect with the current Secretary General? He himself is deep in with these people and always has been.
He has a long track record with Mr. Arafat.
Arafat, yes.
Indeed. The late Mr. Arafat, indeed. Yes. Yeah. Another question here. If the hostages had been liberated, freed according to you, would the war have been interrupted had the hostages been freed?
Well, first of all, hostages were freed. Around 50 or so hostages were freed in November, December of last year. And the war was stopped for 6 weeks.
That's right.
During that period. And the truth is that there is no hostage on the table. There never has been. There has not been any hostage deal on the table since that hostage deal.
That's right.
The question is moot. There isn't. It's a hypothetical question. And in Israel, it's very, very sad. But there are people some of the families of the hostage, who themselves appear to have been taken hostage by leftist, extreme left, anti-government demonstrators, and it's very, very sad to see.
They've been manipulated.
They've been terribly manipulated. As if the government doesn't want to free their family members. And of course, obviously, that's not true. There just isn't a deal on the table.
Right,
number one. And number two, I don't think it's irresponsible if the government doesn't want to agree to a deal that would put the country in danger.
Absolutely. The country has to think about future hostages that may ensue from...
huge mistake was made by Netanyahu with Gilad Shalit back in the day, when one soldier, and Israel gave in because there was a public campaign in the media, all over the media, to free Gilad Shalit. It's all you heard 24/7, constantly. And I have to say, and Netanyahu gave in and agreed to free 1,027 hostages for one soldier. And Sinwar was one of them.
Okay? That's right.
And I believe that today Israel has media that is not just left-wing media. We now have a few more Zionist, more nationalist, more patriotic television and radio stations and newspapers that, and if that had been the situation back then, perhaps the prime minister would not have given in to that terrible deal.
That's right. Yes, his arm was twisted by that situation.
His arm was twisted. I think he was wrong, very wrong about that. But I think that today, and he made mistakes along the way, absolutely, we wouldn't be in the situation we are, but I don't completely blame him, because if he had tried to conduct a preemptive war in Gaza,
there wouldn't have been support for it.
There would not have been support for it. The people would have refused to serve. There was a terrible situation here, and he was anything he tries to do that isn't even just a point. Some people in various positions that ministers are supposed to do, that's what they're supposed to do, appoint other people to head various governmental bodies. Everything is taken to the Supreme Court. Everything is appealed, and the judges are almost always, not always, but almost always on the side of the petitioners, and the government can't govern that way. You just cannot govern that way.
And that will be, I believe, Ruchie, that'll be a topic for one of our future discussions. The media academic axis media academic judiciary axis, which to a great extent has conditioned the politics in the country.
Absolutely, and it's not only in Israel. It's not only in Israel. It's happening everywhere where the popular vote goes to the right. So the left realizes it's not going to win in the electoral process, so it takes over from another direction.
Excellent. And Ruchie, with your permission, I think that's something we'll examine in a future webinar.
Excellent.
Edda, do you agree with that? We'll talk about that in a future webinar.
Yes.
This axis, this judiciary academic media axis, which is
will be great. It will be great. Before to close, I have a question, if you have enough time. Which the future times, what do you think will happen to Judea and Samaria? Your opinion?
I believe that Israel should apply sovereignty to Judea and Samaria. We should the land. I think this is probably the most important question, because it's going to lead to the most important conclusion. The land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel. And we have to say it. It goes back to what I said earlier. When Israel does the right thing, the world follows. The right thing is for Judea and Samaria. I mean, it is the heart of the land of Israel.
Yes.
It must belong completely to Israel. And we have to find a solution. I understand that David Friedman, who is the previous ambassador, American ambassador to Israel, has just written a book, which I would be happy to discuss at one of our next meetings, with a solution, what he proposes that we have to do, that we have to apply sovereignty to Judea and Samaria, make it part of Israel, just like every other part of Israel. And those members of the population, the Arab population, who prove to be loyal, will receive some kind of rights, residential rights, of course, and political rights to a certain extent, certainly local political rights, and we'll just have to see how that can be worked out eventually. But we can't have this not here, not there, not as we say, not swallow and not vomit. We have to find a solution to it, and it's ours, and we have to say it's ours. And if we don't say it's ours, no one else will.
That's absolutely right. And this is to the benefit of the loyal population, such as the Druze and Christians and decent Muslims who participate actively and have woven themselves into the fabric of the Jewish nation. So there is absolutely no issue there. Okay, there's no issue of repression. People who respect the Jewish identity have full capacity for expression and for improvement and religious rights. It's not even up for discussion. Ruchie, one last question, and then we'll let you go. Okay, it concerns the American election. Okay, do you think there would be a big difference between the eventual presidency of Trump or Miss Kamala Harris, or do you believe they're more or less the same?
They're definitely not the same. They're definitely not the same. There's no question about it. I think Trump. I don't have to expand on Trump. Trump has already been president. We saw what he did. He recognized the Golan Heights as part of Israel. He moved the American embassy. Everybody said, "Oh, it's going to blow up the Middle." Didn't blow up the Middle East. Did not blow up the Middle East. Moved the American embassy. Other countries followed suit, and more will follow suit. There's no question about Trump. She is a completely different kettle of fish. A very not pleasant smelling kettle of fish. She is an extreme progressive leftist. I don't think I have to explain what that is to people in Europe. You know what it is. You have the same problems in Europe with people of that nature. They don't believe in borders. They believe in global governments. They don't believe in religion. They don't believe in human life. Abortion is one of the most important values for them. I mean, that's the most important thing, that she fights for abortion. It's just unbelievable,
That's right.
That they consider to be the most important thing. It's nihilism, complete nihilism. It's a destruction of human society. It's not a life. She doesn't have any children. Nobody's ever mentioned this, by the way, during the during the elections. Nobody talks about that, but she doesn't have children. There are too many leaders in the world today who don't have children, like Macron, like Angela Merkel, and other people. They don't have children. People who don't have children don't really have a stake in the future. All they're interested in is power. Right?
That's a very important insight.
Thank you.
We've had a wonderful conversation this evening, Ruchie. I think this has really been one of our best webinars. And if Dr. Fogarollo is in agreement, we'd love to have Ruchie here again. What do you say, Dr. Fogarollo?
Yes, would be great.
With pleasure. With pleasure.
Okay.
Now I think there are some questions from the people that was connected with us.
I think I've been asking the questions.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, the questions I've asked. So I think we're done and dusted with the questions. Ruchie, thank you so much. It's been, I believe, one of our most interesting webinars, and we've also raised some topics for future discussion. And so, with your permission, we'd like to have you again with us sometime in the future. Excellent. Excellent. So, we'll end it there, okay? And it will be, as we say in Israel, lehitraot, au revoir, and
arrivederci.
Yes, but for the question from the people, Mark.
I've already asked the questions and they've already been answered.
Okay.
All has been done. I'm a male multitasker. I'm the new evolution of the species.
Well, you're a simultaneous interpreter.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
It's a joy to be. It's a fantastic time. It was a fantastic time together, and I hope also for the people that are following us this week. And thank you so much. I hope to see you in Israel.
I hope very
Italy.
much to see you in Israel as well.
Thank you so much.